Lighthouses, those beacons standing tall against the crashing waves. They've always kind of captivated our imaginations, haven't they? There's a certain romance to them, I think, but also an undeniable air of mystery, even a touch of spookiness.
Yeah, yeah. It is interesting how that romantic image often goes hand in hand with stories of hauntings and madness,
Right.
as if the isolation and the constant presence of danger somehow created something unsettling.
Right. I mean, think about it. Reaching the shore was incredibly dangerous for ships for centuries. Before modern navigation, you had invisible rocks, reefs, sudden storms. Shipwrecks were a common occurrence.
Absolutely. And lighthouses, at least before the technology we're familiar with today, weren't always enough to prevent them. The story of the French frigate La Méduse is a chilling example. It was shipwrecked in 1816. The survivors were stranded on a makeshift raft. They were abandoned by their captain. And what happened on that raft, survival took a pretty dark turn involving cannibalism.
That's a stark reminder of just how dangerous sea travel used to be. It really puts the importance of lighthouses in perspective. Speaking of which, the invention of the Fresnel lens was a game changer, wasn't it?
Absolutely revolutionary. Augustin Jean Fresnel's design, with its concentric prisms focusing light into a powerful beam, transformed lighthouses into the beacons of hope we know today. Suddenly, they were visible for miles, guiding ships safely to harbor.
It's not just about safety, though, is it? The Fresnel lens seems to have a deeper kind of symbolic meaning as well.
Oh, definitely. It represents knowledge, enlightenment. Think of the film The Lighthouse and how the lens becomes an object of obsession, almost a sacred relic.
Like that lens holds a power that can illuminate and consume at the same time. And speaking of consuming, you mentioned something about Fresnel lenses being used in warfare.
That's right. As powerful as they were for good, they could also be used for more sinister purposes. The same beam that guided friendly ships could also reveal their position to the enemy. During World War II, lighthouses became strategic points, with the U.S. Navy taking control of the lighthouse service. In Europe, the Germans went so far as to booby-trap lighthouses and even remove the lenses to prevent them from aiding the Allied forces.
So the Fresnel lens, a symbol of hope and safety, also has a darker side. It makes you think about the duality of technology, how it can be used for both good and bad. But let's shift our focus to the people who kept those lights burning, the lighthouse keepers. What was life like for them?
Imagine a life confined to a solitary tower, the rhythm of your days dictated by the sea, the weather, and the constant need to maintain that vital light.
It sounds both romantic and
Mm.
incredibly challenging. I mean, how did they even get supplies? Some of
Ah.
these lighthouses were built on remote islands or perched on dangerous cliffs.
Exactly. Accessing some of these lighthouses was a feat in itself. Take the Point Bonita Lighthouse, for example. It was so difficult to reach that a tunnel had to be carved through a cliff just to get to it. And the workers who built that tunnel, under incredibly harsh and dangerous conditions, were mostly Chinese immigrants.
It's a reminder of the often overlooked contributions of Chinese immigrants in building infrastructure across the United States. They faced terrible conditions and rampant discrimination, especially during the era of the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Right, you are. That act, passed in 1882, barred Chinese workers from immigrating to the U.S. and wasn't repealed until 1943. It's a dark chapter in American history, highlighting the prejudice and injustice faced by these communities.
And this was also the time when African Americans started to take on more prominent roles in lighthouse operations, wasn't it?
Yes, after the Civil War, many freedmen found employment with the lighthouse service. In fact, the first black keeper of the Cape Henry Lighthouse was Willis Augustus Hodges. Interestingly, during the Civil War, he was a spy for the Union Army and helped enslaved people escape to freedom via the Underground Railroad.
A spy and a lighthouse keeper. That's quite a story. Were there other notable black keepers?
Absolutely. Venus Parker, for instance, took over her husband's duties after his death, demonstrating the dedication of lighthouse keepers' families. And then there's the incredible story of Richard Etheridge and the all-black crew of the Pea Island Life-Saving Station. They were known for their bravery and skill in rescuing people from shipwrecks, saving countless lives.
So amidst the isolation and challenges, there were also inspiring stories of courage and perseverance. But we can't ignore the darker side of lighthouse life. The isolation, the constant responsibility, the exposure to the elements. It must have taken a toll on mental health.
Right, you are. And we have some historical evidence to support that. For instance, in 1913, just 8 months after the Angel's Gate Lighthouse began operating, the head keeper, John Olson, had to suspend his assistant for assault. The logbook even mentions banning alcohol from the station, suggesting that tensions were running high.
It's a reminder that even amidst the beauty and romanticism, lighthouse life could be incredibly stressful. And I believe you have another story, one that's even more disturbing, something about the Smalls Lighthouse.
The Smalls Lighthouse, off the coast of Wales, seemed to be plagued with misfortune from the start. Its designer, Henry Whiteside, even got stranded there during a storm and had to send a desperate message in a bottle begging for rescue. But what happened later is even more tragic. 25 years after Whiteside's ordeal, two keepers, Thomas Griffith and Thomas Howell, were stationed at Smalls. People on shore noticed a distress signal, but the weather was too treacherous for rescue.
So they were trapped.
For weeks, Griffith fell ill and died, and Howell, unable to bury the body at sea for fear of being accused of murder, was forced to build a makeshift coffin and secure it to the railing outside. He was stuck there with his friend's decomposing body for weeks. By the time rescuers finally reached Smalls, Howell was barely recognizable.
That's a truly horrifying experience. It makes you wonder if the isolation and the constant proximity to death contributed to the perception of lighthouses as haunted places.
It's certainly possible, but there's another theory about why some keepers experience mental health issues. It involves something a bit unexpected: mercury poisoning. You see, in the late 19th century, a method was devised to rotate those massive Fresnel lenses more easily. They would float the lanterns on a bath of mercury.
Wait, mercury, as in the toxic metal.
The very same. And at the time, people weren't fully aware of its dangers. Prolonged exposure to mercury vapor can cause a whole range of neurological problems: memory loss, mood swings, anxiety, even hallucinations.
And the keepers were spending hours each day up in those towers right next to those mercury baths.
Exactly. And they weren't wearing any protective gear. It's no surprise that after this practice was adopted, there was a sharp increase in keepers exhibiting signs of mental distress.
What kind of signs are we talking about?
There are some chilling accounts. Keepers at Minot's Ledge Lighthouse claimed the lamp was cleaning and filling itself. At Langara Point, a keeper drank methyl hydrate, ran into the bushes, then reappeared naked, swinging an axe.
That's truly disturbing. And to think this was happening at a time when mental health care was very limited, it's a tragic chapter in lighthouse history. But weren't there keepers who genuinely loved their work? Did anyone find joy amidst these hardships?
Of course, of course. For every tale of hardship and tragedy, there are also stories of resilience, dedication, and even joy. Take Willie Austin, the keeper at Point Fermin. He was known for throwing lively parties at the lighthouse with his wife, and his daughter was so captivated by lighthouse life that she later petitioned to become a keeper herself, describing it as a place of romance and adventure.
It's heartwarming to hear that amidst the darkness, there was light, both literally and metaphorically. It seems lighthouse life wasn't all doom and gloom after all. It's fascinating how lighthouse life could be so diverse.
Yeah.
You know, from hardship and tragedy to joy and a sense of adventure. It seems like those contrasting elements are part of what makes lighthouses so captivating.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just the keepers' lives, but also the technology itself. We were talking about mercury poisoning earlier, and it's a prime example of how our understanding of science and health evolves. You know, what was once considered safe can later turn out to be incredibly harmful.
You mentioned that mercury was used to rotate the Fresnel lenses.
Yeah.
When did people finally realize how dangerous it was?
Well, awareness grew gradually, but it is surprising how long it took for the practice of using mercury baths to be phased out. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that the full extent of the health risks became undeniable.
So for decades, lighthouse keepers and their families were exposed to this toxic substance without fully understanding the consequences.
Yeah.
It makes those stories of madness even more tragic.
Yeah. It's a sobering thought, but it also highlights how our knowledge is constantly evolving, and what we consider safe today might be viewed as dangerous in the future.
That's a good point. It makes you appreciate the progress we've made, but also encourages a healthy dose of skepticism about what we think we know. But let's go back to lighthouses themselves. Even with all the dangers and hardships, there's still something undeniably alluring about them, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. There's a sense of timelessness,
Yeah.
of being connected to something larger than ourselves.
And a bit of mystery, too.
Hmm.
What did those keepers see out there on those long, lonely nights? What stories did the sea whisper to them?
Oh, it's easy to imagine them seeing shapes in the fog, hearing voices in the wind. And if they were already experiencing the effects of mercury poisoning, those experiences must have been even more intense.
It's no wonder lighthouses have become intertwined with so many ghostly tales.
Exactly. You know, those tales have become part of their charm, part of what draws us to them.
Speaking of lighthouses today, Most are automated now, right?
That's right, that's right. Advances in technology have made it possible for lighthouses to operate without human keepers. It's safer, it's more efficient, and let's be honest, probably less lonely.
So so that romantic image of the solitary keeper tending the light is a thing of the past.
For the most part, yes. But the stories and the legends, those haven't faded. They live on in books, in films, in our imaginations.
It's like the lighthouses themselves. They
Right.
may no longer serve their original purpose in the same way, but they still stand as symbols of human resilience and our enduring fascination with the sea.
And perhaps those spirits of the past, those keepers who braved the elements in isolation, still linger in those towers, watching over the waves, their stories echoing through the wind.
Okay, you're giving me chills now. But seriously, it's amazing to think about the impact these structures have had, both practically and on our collective imagination.
Yeah.
They're more than just buildings. They're landmarks, symbols, storytellers.
Exactly. And even though the era of the human lighthouse keeper is largely over, their legacy lives on. You know, those stories remind us of human ingenuity, the spirit of exploration, and the enduring mystery of the sea.
So what do you think our listeners should take away from all of this? Are you ready to encourage them to delve a little deeper into the world of lighthouses?
I think so. Maybe they could research the history of their local lighthouse or read some of the captivating accounts from keepers of old. Who knows what secrets they might uncover?
I know I'm feeling inspired to learn more. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a sudden urge to visit a lighthouse. Maybe climb to the top, feel that wind in my hair, and try to imagine what it was like to be a keeper.
Yeah.
And gazing out at that vast expanse of ocean.
Yeah, it's that connection to history, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
these structures hold so many stories, tales of human experience that are both inspiring and at times a bit haunting.
That's true. That's true. We've covered a lot of ground in this conversation. Shipwrecks, isolation, even mercury poisoning. But amidst all that darkness, it's important to remember the brighter side of lighthouse life,
Mm.
the resilience, the dedication, and the genuine love some keepers had for their work.
Absolutely. Not every keeper succumbed to madness or despair. You know, many found solace and even joy in their solitary lives, you know, tending the light and ensuring the safety of others.
Like Willie Austin's daughter wanting to follow in her father's footsteps, seeking that romance and adventure.
Hmm.
It's a reminder that even in the most challenging environments, the human spirit can find a way to thrive.
Right. And those stories of resilience, of finding purpose and meaning amidst solitude, those are the ones that truly resonate, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I think so. They remind us that even in the face of adversity, there's always hope.
So as we wrap up our conversation about lighthouses, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all this?
Well, I hope they see lighthouses as more than just navigational aids. They're repositories of history,
Hmm.
filled with stories of courage, hardship, innovation, and yes, even a touch of the supernatural. They represent our connection to the sea, its power and its mystery.
Yeah. It's like those beams of light, once so vital for guiding ships, now illuminate a different kind of path, a path through history, through human experience, through the enduring mysteries of the sea.
And maybe, just maybe, those beams also shine a light on our own capacity for resilience, for finding hope in difficult times, and for embracing the allure of the unknown.
Well said, well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and to our listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those lighthouse beams shining brightly in your imagination.